Hi there, today we will be looking at a game engine I started developing. Eventually I hope to make a game that's a lot like 1942 but with the ground enemies added to the mix, like in Raiden. The point of this engine is to separate the content from the engine. All positioning and scripting is done in the tiled editor. Here you see these diagonal flyers. This is the script they are using. M is just shorthand for move in X and Y. This guy doing the loop has this script. The arc command says the position and sprite frame. There is no arc command in the game. The compiler breaks the arc into several move commands. These guys call subroutines that they share. This greatly reduces the token stream code size. This also indicates that each object has a program counter and local memory, as in 16 bytes. Byte 0 is the stack pointer and the stack fills from the top down. Each of the 16 bytes can also be directly addressed as variables using v0 through v15 in script. The contents to be loaded by the game are described in a file or files that group the content into sections. Some sections are always loaded and some are loaded per level or by the UI. A section might look like this, and this section is always loaded at VRAM location 7800. It describes the player and says the player graphics are in a file player 0 and there are 4 frames. You can create many virtual frames, which are the VRAM frames but with the X and Y flipping. Frame 3 also creates an alias for the last frame, calling it last. That name I can use in the game and editor as player_last. You can also create other aliases, such as these to describe the colors as they relate to the palette, for example. This enemy is constructed from several sprites. I call this an aggregate enemy. It is constructed by describing how the assets fit together. The triplets say which frame and in what location that frame is. It is possible to turn the scrolling on and off, and therefore a helicopter makes sense as a player ship. Also, since the screen aspect ratio is really not great for this type of game, wider versus longer, it's better to have a ship that moves a little bit slower. This is a boss mockup. It's an aggregate of 4 assets and in most cases several frames from each asset. There's also substantially more code to the boss as seen here. The way the state is controlled is through the ability of the aggregate members being able to see the variables in the master aggregate object. They all see those variables as v17 through v31, which maps in the master object to v0 through v15. What's interesting about this guy is that you can see from the small gun that is flying around that local space motion of aggregate members is okay and is relative to the master motion. Looking at the script, you can also see that each aggregate member can run its own script. You can see that small gun 1, 3 and 5 share a script, small gun 2 has a special motion, and all other small gun members are set to frame 6 and they do nothing more. That's what the knob does. That was just a quick overview of the engine I'm working on. There's a lot more work to be done, starting with the enemies shooting back. I didn't show myself shooting but that, and all of the collision detection is in and working. The beauty of this is that it puts the game design in the hands of a designer and the graphics in the hand of a graphics artist. Hopefully this turns into a nice game someday. Thank you for your time.